The news, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong will deliver his first National Day rally speech this Sunday from 6:45 p.m. The speech will be broadcast live on TV, radio and online platforms. Mr. Wong will first speak in Malay, followed by Mandarin. His English speech will start at 8 p.m. The event will be streamed on Mr. Wong's and the Prime Minister's office YouTube channels. It will also be on MeWatch and, of course, CNA.Asia. The rally is seen as the most important political speech of the year, and that's when the Prime Minister addresses the nation and touches on key policy matters. Last year, then Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong announced a $7 billion package to help seniors meet retirement needs, as well as explain the new classification of built-to-order flats. In his National Day message last week, Mr. Wong said the government would redouble efforts to keep the cost of living stable for Singaporeans and strengthen the country's system of social support.
The National Day rally will also give us, a sense of, his leadership style, to add to what we already know, of Mr. Wong, as a leader. I think, it is through this extended platform, the opportunity, to talk at issues, in much greater detail, to paint, his vision, to explain some of the policy thinking.
Well, we've got more analysis now. I'm joined by Associate Professor Eugene Tan from the SMU School of Law. Eugene, we heard some preliminary comments there, but given that, it is the most important policy and political speech of the year, what was your impression of the prelude to that, the National Day speech?
Well, the National Day message, I thought it was a rather upbeat message. I think, one got a sense that he was cautiously optimistic about, Singapore and Singaporeans' ability, to deal with the challenges of the day. But I think Prime Minister Wong was also assuring, right? Again, reminding Singaporeans that the government is aware of the challenges, particularly with cost of living and inflation, and that, they will put in the effort, to ensure, that these concerns are, in a way, mitigated. So I think overall, it was rather upbeat.
Upbeat, you say. Was there something that he did not touch on? I'm asking because, there are expectations that this speech will perhaps flesh out what was said in the National Day speech, or it could perhaps give an insight into the thinking behind.
Oh, definitely, right. So I think he mentioned about, helping Singaporeans cope with the cost of living. He talked also about helping Singaporeans who face employment setbacks. So I think these will be two issues that he raised in his National Day message, which I believe will be further elaborated, in his rally speech. But we can expect, many other issues, to be dealt with. He, for example, in his National Day message, he spoke about powerful forces, that shapes, Singapore's operating environment. And I think that's where, the foreign meets the domestic. As an economy that's so heavily connected, to the world, all these issues, will affect Singapore. And so I think, he will take the opportunity to come up close and personal, right? So the National Day message was really, in a way, an introduction, but we can expect, in his first National Day rally speech, for Prime Minister Wong, to cover, fairly wide-ranging issues.
I mean, he has some big shoes to fill. The Singaporean on the street has expectations of some deliverables. What do you think they want to hear?
I think they want to hear concrete plans, right? So because over the last couple of years, the government has really been trying to help Singaporeans, through rebates, through GST top-ups, through CDC vouchers, to help Singaporeans cope with the cost of living. I think, they will want to see, what other plans, the government has. And at last year's National Day rally, then Prime Minister Lee spoke about, what I would describe as re-employment support, right? Support that will be given to Singaporeans who are involuntarily made unemployed, how to get them back onto the job market, in a better position. And I think he's indicated that he will provide, some details.
Build on that.
Right? And I think that's something that Singaporeans want to hear, right? So the plans were, or rather that big plan was announced last year. So let's get down to the brass tacks. What exactly will you do? What are some of the policy thinking, behind the measures that will be introduced? But again, I don't think he will reveal everything, right? Because I think, in terms of, coming down to the dollars and cents, that's something that I think he will save it, for next year's budget speech.
Next year's, but do you think he'll save more about the enhanced support for families under the Forward Singapore initiative? Because, the families are still facing the challenges of cost of living. Is that something that you feel he's going to, again, get down to the brass tacks of?
I think he will, and I think that the expectation is that he has to. We are looking at, a super aging society. Families are getting smaller, birth rates are declining as well. And you talk about the sandwich, class or the sandwich generation, people who have to look after elderly parents as well as raise, young families. So I think we can expect families, to feature prominently, in his National Day rally speech. And they all tie in again with bread and butter issues, right? So the concerns of today will affect families as to how, they view the future. How Singaporeans, view their lives today will also depend not just on where they think the country is going, but also whether they are dealing with the present issues.
Absolutely.
So these are the sort of bifocal approach he has to take.
I can imagine, ears will be pricked. Just a final question. Do you get a sense from what he said and that the NDP speech as well as the NDR speech might be used perhaps as a platform for GE, perhaps? I mean, are you getting that sense?
Well, I mean, we should look at the National Day rally certainly as a political speech, right? Because it is about the head of government, the Prime Minister, addressing Singaporeans, telling them, rallying them, on some of the key issues of the day. But the National Day rally is not a political platform. By that I mean, for the Prime Minister to make partisan speeches. So it will be that delicate balance. And I think he will reach out better to Singaporeans, if the speech is not seen as serving partisan ends. And I think the Prime Ministers have been very aware of that, over the decades. And so I think we'll see him addressing, the nation as the Prime Minister. There'll be no distinction as to whether, which party you support, where your political loyalties lie. It is really about how, Singaporeans as one people, can come together, to deal with all the big issues of the day.
I suspect we might be discussing this again in a few days' time, Eugene, but thank you so much for your thoughts today. I've been speaking there with Associate Professor Eugene Tan from the SMU School of Law.